Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. Newsstand editions are a great way to get a more rare collector item in a 9.8. If I bring up my kind of trusty newsstand graphic here, in 1986 you'll see that the directs in the newsstands were about the same percentage of the print run. And then when you get into the late 80s, early 90s, the newsstands really plummet and become a lesser percentage of the print run, making them more rare and better collector items. The sort of basic difference between a direct and a newsstand is direct editions went right to the comic shop. Newsstand editions went to convenience stores and grocery stores, and we're often on those kind of spinning newsstand racks that were probably more prominent in the 80s, I would say. And to tell the difference from a newsstand to a direct, you want to look at the barcode. A newsstand barcode, and I'll throw up a few graphics here given the era, but the newsstand barcode is always going to have on the shorter part of the barcode just 2 numbers, whereas the direct editions have 5 numbers on that shorter part of the barcode. Oftentimes the directs too, depending on the era, they'll have like some kind of decal. But for newsstand editions, you want to look for that barcode with the short end of the barcode having 2 numbers. That's kind of the telltale sign of a newsstand edition. So today I just want to go through some of the essential newsstand ones that I think are just great buys in a 9.8. I got a full list of honorable mentions as well. I will mention, I'm going to stay into the early 90s with all the kind of comics we'll talk about. I think in the early 90s, the newsstands are really gettable. They're easier to find in the 9.8. Not saying that some of the 1980s books aren't great in the newsstand either. It's just kind of too many key issues to fit in one video, to be honest. Okay, first one, Amazing Spider-Man 361 in a newsstand edition. First full appearance of Carnage. One really heavily printed book, early 90s. Makes a lot of sense, I think, to get the newsstand edition for a first appearance of Carnage. They don't separate the newsstand editions on the census. There's 4,887 9.8s in a universal blue label. One of the more popular graded comic books of all time, and that just makes it a great buy in the newsstand. It's really popular. There's a lot of these in the 9.8, 4,887. So, probably about 20% of those at least are going to be newsstand editions in the 9.8. 23.9%, the 9.8 ratio for Amazing Spider-Man 361 9.8. Saw one sell in a newsstand recently for $750. I think that's pretty bang on fair. This one, absolutely, like last year during, the Let There Be Carnage trailer, I guess it was, right around that time, these absolutely sailed over 1,000. I think they might have even touched $2,000 there for a week, right when that trailer came out. Some people just got in there and overpaid. But pulling all the way back to 750. So Amazing Spider-Man 361. I think the timing's right on this one, whether it's in the newsstand or the direct. And a newsstand that one sell around $750 on the Comic Link auction. I think that's a pretty great deal for Amazing Spider-Man 361, and one you want in a newsstand edition. Just makes a lot of sense. Pretty easy to find in a newsstand edition. Some of these early 90s books too, which is a bonus. Next one, Spawn #1 newsstand edition. Maybe even more so than some of the Marvel comics. Image comics, almost all of them went to the comic shop. They didn't have a real a big newsstand logistics network. So the sort of I guess rumor or common knowledge is that 1 in 100 printed image comics were newsstand, so it's kind of a 1 for 100 variant. Sometimes you'll see these newsstand image comics described like a 1 for 100 variant. But Spawn #1, first appearance of Spawn is just 1-to-1 in the more rare newsstand. Makes a lot of sense, and you see quite a few Spawn #1 newsstand editions, so a little bit easier to find, I think, than a lot of the 1980s newsstand books. But 8,392 9.8s in a universal blue label. So definitely makes sense to try to get the more rare version, since there's 8,392 of these in the 9.8. 49.5%, the 9.8 ratio, so about half of them are 9.8s that are sent to CGC. Just saw one recently sell on eBay in the last few days. It was kind of one of those auctions where the starting bid was like a really high bid. It was at $900, the starting bid, and it got one bid and ended up selling at $900. If you go back like a month or two, a few of these, one had sold for $1,100, one sold for $1,150, I saw. But yeah, that recent one's selling for $900. So I think that's the range on this one, closer to $900. I think Spawn #1 newsstand, the 9.8, is absolutely one to get. I'm kind of on the record saying I would not mind having another one, Spawn being one of my favorite heroes, and growing up in the 90s, loving Spawn. At least I got one. But okay, next one I do not have. I got a direct edition 9.8, but a New Mutants 98 in a newsstand edition. First appearance of Deadpool. This is a great one as well. Really taken off in price. I think kind of hitting myself a little bit when I bought my New Mutants 98. I probably just should have splurged for the newsstand edition. At that time, they were maybe $200 or $300 more than the direct editions. Newsstand editions I've really heated up though. You know, a year or two ago when coronavirus hit, the comic book market just went on fire. Some of these more rare newsstands just absolutely exploded. New Mutants 98 though, 3,653 9.8. So again, tons of these in a 9.8. Makes a lot of sense to go after the more rare newsstand. 18.8% is the 9.8 ratio on New Mutants 98. Not too bad at all. That was right around like 21% when I first got into collecting. So over time, that's ticking down a little bit, which is nice to see. Saw a newsstand edition sell in an auction. New Mutants 98 9.8 white pages, $3,801. Yeah, you know, this is one that's absolutely trended up well. The direct editions right now are going for kind of 1,600, 1,700. So getting on over double based on this auction price, 3,801. I think, yeah, kind of maybe you get it closer to 3,500 if you're in the market for a New Mutants 98 newsstand edition 9.8. 3,500 to 4,000, I think, depending on how awesome it looks, how well centered it is, if it's in a new case. I think it is, yeah, pretty worth it. It's a good time on New Mutants 98 right now. You know, eventually that Deadpool movie is going to come in the MCU, so I think before that starts to heat up, you know, it's a decent time to look at it. New Mutants 98, and in the newsstand, even better, more rare. Okay, so those are the main three I just want to like touch on as, hey, these are, you know, huge key issues where there's a lot of them in the 9.8. It makes a lot of sense to get the newsstand edition. Let's have a look at some honorable mentions, though. Superman number 75, The Death of Superman, in a newsstand edition, I think is kind of a pretty cool Superman key issue to consider. I actually tried to get, I was outbid on one of these about a year or two ago it was. I was trying to get it for like $110, $120 or so. I think it ended up going for like $140 or $150 in that auction. I think recent prices on this one kind of $175 to $200. But Superman 75, Death of Superman, a really heavily printed one, kind of makes sense to get it in that newsstand edition. And you see them, not all the time, but you see them quite often kind of pop up on an auction. And, you know, one I would try to get under $200. Infinity Gauntlet, number 1. Yeah, a big early 90s key issue. Great one to think about in a newsstand edition. I just picked up a Silver Surfer 44, first appearance of the Infinity Gauntlet in a newsstand edition. I never see that one. There's not even a lot of those in the 9.8, to be honest. I think it's like 300 and something on the census in a 9.8. So that one's a great one in the newsstand as well. I was kind of over the moon to be able to grab a Silver Surfer 44 newsstand 9.8. Uncanny X-Men 266, first appearance of Gambit, big early 90s key. You get that one in the newsstand. That's a phenomenal collector item. Talked about this one before, Green Lantern 49. Absolutely love this cover. This is one I kind of want, admittedly, in the newsstand edition as well. I would go after this one in the newsstand edition. They have the like DC logo edition, which is separate from the direct edition as well. Occasionally, you know, you'll have that with certain books, but I think the newsstand edition for Green Lantern 49 is just a classic cover to want in that more rare newsstand for sure. New Mutants 87, first appearance Cable, Rob Liefeld, McFarlane cover. This one's cool to get in a newsstand as well. Spiderman number 1, talked about this one. Often kind of recommended it off and on as just a really good affordable one. In the newsstand too, I would absolutely, if you want a Spider-Man number 1, I would target a newsstand edition. There's so many direct editions for a Spider-Man number 1. You know, if you wanted to collect that one, I think in a 9.8 you get the newsstand edition. That's a great deal. And they're kind of $200 to $250, I would say. There was one I was watching in the last month or two that ended up selling, and I think it sold for about $225 or so. Newsstand edition, Spider-Man number 1, just in the normal cover. The gold UPC newsstand edition is extremely expensive in a 9.8. But next one, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 1. I've recommended this one recently, and there's actually a newsstand edition on eBay right now. I think it's like $799 in a newsstand 9.8 for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 1. Kind of tempting, maybe if I was like the biggest Power Rangers fan. I like Power Rangers, but I'm not like a huge fan, I would say. But that one in the newsstand edition is kind of a cool one. There's not too many in the 9.8 on that one, and to get a newsstand would be a phenomenal collector item, I think. Yeah, $7.99, that one on eBay right now. It's, you know, kind of tempting. I would, if I was the biggest Power Rangers fan, I would be looking twice at that, I think. Iron Man 282, first appearance of War Machine. This is a cool one to get in the newsstand. You don't see this one too often. I think there is one on eBay right now. But that one, occasionally, yeah, you don't see that one for quite a long time. That is a cool one to get in a 9.8. And the last one here, honorable mentions, one I do have in a CBCS 9.8, Batman 457, newsstand edition. The kind of first official appearance of Tim Drake as Robin. A cool early 90s one to think about in a newsstand edition. Yeah, this one, I bought this one for $100 in a CBCS 9.8 about a year ago. I think the newsstand editions in a CGC 9.8 are kind of $175 to $200. Maybe you find the CBCS for a little bit less, but yeah, Batman 457 is one to consider in a newsstand edition. Okay, so for the video today, I did just focus on early 1990s books, which I think are the easiest to find in a newsstand edition, which is kind of the route I went on this video. There's a lot of great 1980s books to think about in a newsstand edition, and certainly off and on we cover those on the channel as well. But hopefully, yeah, you got a good overview of newsstand editions, and yeah, some of the great early 90s ones are just phenomenal collector items, I think, in a 9.8. Alrighty, thanks team so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. If you're liking my content, please subscribe and hit that bell, and I'll keep you updated on future videos.